Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, July 5th, the 186th day of the year. There are 179 days left in 2022. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Another mass shooting yesterday, this time in Highland Park, Illinois. Gunman shooting from a rooftop, killed 6 people, wounded dozens more during a 4th of July celebration in Highland Park. What's interesting is what we've come to accept as a way of life. I was watching a television show yesterday and I thought it's the 4th of July. I'm going to flip over to the news and see if there were any shootings today, which is a sad thing to say. And of course, flipped over and they're talking about this shooting in Highland Park. We've come to expect it. I hope we never come to accept it. But there were at least 4 mass shootings, I think, over this past weekend. It's the life we live. On a couple days from now, on July 7th, famed Alabama civil rights attorney Fred Gray Sr. will be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor at the White House by President Joe Biden. Gray, the 91-year-old attorney, still practices law at his Tuskegee offices as well as in his hometown of Montgomery, where the street he grew up on was renamed last year from Jefferson Davis Avenue to Fred D. Gray Avenue. Attorney Gray represented Martin Luther King Jr., as told in the new book Alabama versus King. He also represented Rosa Parks. Many of his courtroom victories led to many of the most important gains in reducing the vast disparity in rights when he opened his office in Montgomery, Alabama in 1954. President Biden is presenting the Award of Freedom to 17 living and deceased Americans who have made exemplary contributions to the prosperity, values, or security of the United States, world peace, or other significant societal, public, or private endeavors. Congratulations to Attorney Gray. He's meant a lot to many of us who have followed in the trail that he blazed for us. Our G-List guest for today is Dr. Felicia Bowen, an inaugural Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of Alabama at Birmingham School of Nursing. We look forward to that conversation. This edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 years. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars. Introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Barbara, are you there this morning? How are you?
I'm here, Thom. Good morning. I'm well. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. So how was your 4th of July weekend?
My 4th of July weekend was busy as usual. You know, I was traveling last week. I spent the week in Ohio visiting my family there and had a great time. Got a chance to go to the Ohio State University campus and tour the campus. And so I had a really great visit with them and came back to went through Knoxville, visited some family there, spent a couple of days there, and then back to Atlanta on yesterday or Sunday, and came home on last night. So it was been a whirlwind of a week for me.
Man, I'm tired just listening to you.
I know. I was tired too. I drove over almost 2,000 miles, Thom, for the whole trip. So it was tiring.
You drove to California.
Almost, yeah. Yes.
Good
Yeah,
deal.
so it was a busy time for me, but had some great times. I got a brand new great nephew during the week.
Well,
I
I
want to say
saw that
congratulations.
photo. I was going to ask you about it. Go
Yes,
ahead. Tell us
yes.
about it.
I'm so excited. My little great nephew was born. Bo Langston arrived on last Tuesday, and his parents, Becky and Brendan Buck Wallace, the beautiful parents, and they were so excited. My dad was always concerned about the family name continuing. So, there's only a few boys in our family. And so, of course, Brendan Buck Wallace, my nephew, was the last hope of having another Wallace boy in the family. So we're so excited to have Bo Langston.
Well, we're glad for you guys as well. So
Thank you.
let's get Michael on here. Michael Walker, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Thom. I hope you're doing well, and as you as well, Barbara. How
Thank
are
you,
you?
sir.
Good.
Michael, you didn't happen to drive 2,000 miles this weekend, did you?
Absolutely not. No way, Jose.
And that's I thought about that because I've done that trip 2 or 3 times. That's from where you are, Michael, to Los Angeles. That's
It was grueling, I'll tell you. I didn't realize how tired I was until I got home last night, and I was exhausted, still pretty exhausted. But believe me, I'll be going back to bed after the show's over this morning.
Oh Lord, Michael, how was your fourth?
Well, it wasn't as adventurous as Barbara Wallace's fourth, and that's a good thing. So mine's was relatively calm. I did go down to Auburn over the weekend for a family reunion on the Walker side of the family, and saw a lot of people I haven't seen in a while, a lot of family members, and spent time down there. But it was a busy week for me because I came back from Austin on Tuesday night and was in town for a couple of days, then left Friday to go to Auburn. But I came back Sunday. So I'm not as tired as Barbara. I got some rest on Sunday.
Tell us about your trip to Austin. I think that was a business trip, wasn't it?
It was a business trip for the National Association of Health Underwriters, where we talked about things that are on the horizon for healthcare and new vendors and different things that's coming to the market to help make consumers' lives easier when it comes to healthcare benefits. I will say that I was the recipient of 2 awards. I was presented with the Distinguished Service Award by the association on Tuesday night, and I also received an award as the Regional Vice President for Membership of Excellence. That's dealing with retention. So that was a pretty good week for me.
Congratulations, Michael.
I'm surprised you told us about it. You normally keep those things quiet to yourself, but
yes, he did.
Yeah,
we're glad you did.
Since you asked me about the trip and we did the show from Austin last week, and I already told you how hot it was. There wasn't a whole lot else I could bring about Austin except for that. So that's the only reason why I did that.
A lot of people like. Did you like Austin?
Austin reminded me of Nashville. But it's just so hot. I couldn't enjoy it as much as I would have liked to because it was so hot. Plus, I was pretty busy, so I kind of stayed in the hotel and out of the heat.
I have a niece that lives there in Austin, and I'm planning on visiting this fall. So that's one of my areas to visit. I'll come back and report, Thom, just what the city's like.
I have a nephew that was living there, but he's actually moved to London. So
wow, okay.
His job took him to London, so that's pretty good.
That is good.
So let me ask you guys. I want to ask a sports related question. Tell me what you think about the Big Ten and UCLA and USC going to it's the Big Ten they're going to, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So now they're going to be the 16? Big 16? What are they changing their name to?
Well, they were the Pac-12, right? What
They
was it?
USC and UCLA were part of the Pac-12.
Pac-12,
Now
yes.
they're joining the Big Ten.
So
Right.
it'll be the Big 12, I guess.
So, but are there two more teams or something joining them? I thought it was not just USC and UCLA. I may be wrong, but somebody's getting 16 teams in their conference now. Maybe it's the Pac-12. But
Well,
I think Utah and Wyoming and several other schools are also looking to make a move.
I don't know. I just you wonder where it will end or if it will end, because I think
It's
it's
ever
most of it's
evolving.
about money and
Right.
and building up these conferences. So who knows?
Yeah, we talked about that last week. With the teams joining the SEC, we wonder how many of these conferences are actually going to survive. We may not have in the future. We may not have as many as we have today.
Well, yeah, who knows? I don't know. With the conferences are getting bigger, the NILs out there. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on now. So maybe they'll start playing football in the fall, and some of that will dissipate. But I this off season has been probably the busiest in terms of not just in terms of college football, but the NBA. I mean,
Right.
NBA is crazy right now. And,
Yes, with all the trades and
well, I mean, you sign a guy to a 4-year, what is it, $200-300 million contract. Then he tells you he wants to be traded.
right.
You know,
Right.
So it's I don't know. It's crazy. I think. What do you think, Michael? What do you think Durant's going to end up?
well, there's no telling. I read over the weekend that the Warriors are talking to him about maybe a possible reunion. So yeah. Supposedly, Draymond Green and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are all talking to him about let's do a reunion, come back to the Warriors. I think they're doing that in anticipation of Kyrie Irving joining LeBron in the Lakers. So it's kind of like an arms race, I think.
I see.
Going on. So, who knows where that's going to go.
Who knows what Kyrie will do and how long he'll do it? I don't know. I find him to be an interesting guy.
Yes.
I don't know. So let's talk a little bit about Barbara. I had a thing here for you. The World Games.
Yes.
When does that start?
That starts on this week, Tom, July 7th, and runs through the 17th. And I stand corrected. Last week I told you all that basketball was one of the sports. It's not. There's a long list of sports, over 30 different sporting competitions, but basketball is not one of the events. There are 110 nations participating, Tom.
Wow.
Over 3,600 athletes, 206 events. And of course, the opening ceremonies will be held on July 7th. And for those that don't know, the World Games are held every 4 years, just like the Olympics, but it's held the summer after the Summer Olympics events. It's the year that's held. And it's back in the States. This is the first time it's been back in the States in this 40 years of existence since the inaugural World Games was held in California in 1981. So this is huge for Birmingham. For the United States, period, but certainly for Birmingham. It's going to generate over $246 million, I think, in revenue for the city. It's huge. And security is really tight. They've shut down a lot of the streets downtown, and there's signs all over the interstate saying, you can't come through downtown within the hazmat material. So, they're really taking this thing very seriously.
What's hazmat? What is that?
Hazardous material.
Oh, okay.
So I guess any trucks that are transporting that type of material can't come through downtown. They have to reroute and go a different way.
Okay. Okay. All right. Michael, you got anything else for us?
Yes, I have a couple things that I think is worth some conversation. But one thing in particular, as a result of the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade, the digital abortion clinics and mobile clinics are gearing up to expand now. There's one in particular called Just the Pill. It's a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to improving abortion access. They plan to deploy a fleet of mobile clinics to park along state borders, starting in Colorado.
Wow.
And they have a second mobile clinic, which is a larger clinic that will provide patients with mobile clinic-based procedural abortions, the first in the U.S. So,
Can you say that again? Mobile
okay.
park? Go ahead.
Just the Pill, they have a second larger clinic that will provide patients with mobile clinic-based procedural abortion for the first time in U.S. So, this thing is just going to continue to move, and they're going to go, and they're already doing Idaho, Utah, Nebraska, North Dakota, all those states that are bordering Texas, where women cannot get an abortion. This mobile clinic and some other ones, they are parking along the state lines, so they don't have as far to go, and they can go there and they can use they're using telehealth to do it. They have medicine, and then they have one that will do a procedural abortion. So,
Wow.
and basically what they're calling are digital mobile abortion clinics. So that's popping up all around.
Wow.
So the mobile clinics, I guess, are you saying like telehealth? They'll actually talk to them over the phone, write a prescription for them. They can go pick up that prescription, I guess, somewhere at the border, since it's not legal in some states.
Yes.
And
yeah. Or the other clinic, they can go there and really get treatment. That's what they say, the procedural abortion.
Okay.
So you'll hear a lot more about that. And Just the Pill is just one. There are several others, and they're calling them the digital abortion clinics, basically, is what it turns out to be, to still give people choices. And then the other thing I wanted to comment on, Thom, you talked about the mass shootings and what have you. There are two things. One is the gentleman in Ohio from a traffic stop that was shot 60 times. 25-year-old young man in Ohio was shot 60 times. The coroner has dubbed it a homicide. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, what I find so interesting in this is that the guy that killed 6 people yesterday in Chicago, wounded 30 others.
Yeah.
He was apprehended without incident.
Right.
But here, this young man, 25 years old, he didn't shoot anybody, didn't kill anybody, but he was shot 60 times from a traffic stop.
Yeah.
Come on, help me understand the difference in that, other than the obvious.
Yes.
We know
I should laugh, yeah.
Who shot 60 times, he was an African American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The gentleman that killed 6 people was not an African American. They showed his picture. So you tell me how somebody with an AR-15 can go to a parade and shoot 60 people, hurt 30 others, but a young African American male, 25 years old, is shot 60 times from a traffic stop. Now, the police claim they thought, but it took 60 shots, and they did not find a weapon on him. Now, later they said it was a gun in the car and all this stuff, but I just do not understand that.
I don't either, Michael. And Michael, they actually shot him 60 times. I think there was over 100.
Yeah. They said
fired.
90 to 100 shots fired, but he was hit 60 times.
And the 8 officers that were involved, I think, are on paid leave. They're basically going to pay vacation while this investigation is going forward. And it's just like there's no repercussions. It's sad.
That's where there's a call for reform. Now, the other comment I need to make, and the subject I want to bring up, is dealing with this. A police chief in Michigan over the weekend had to apologize, get this, for images of black men used in target practice.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So now you tell me, now I think I understand now why this gentleman got shot 60 times.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now, of course, I'm being facetious here, but who in Michigan thought that was a good idea at this police station to put images of black men up for target practice? How did they come to that conclusion that that would be a good idea?
well, it begs the question: were there any black police officers even on the force?
That's a good
And
question.
didn't have any disagreement with them shooting at black targets?
I was wondering about that when I first read it, and I just said, okay, I'll just leave that alone and just go straight to the source. Whoever came up with that idea, that was idiotic to think that was a good idea.
Exactly. I agree with you.
And you get this argument all the time that these police and then companies don't need diversity, equity, inclusion training. That's not necessary. That is one evident reason right there why that training is so important, and ongoing, not just one time.
Yeah.
Well, it needs to become a part of life.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
That tells me police are preconditioned mentally to behave the way they're behaving towards African American men in particularly.
Yeah.
That's what that's all about. And Barbara, to your point, saying they don't believe there needs to be anything, and again, I'm going to be facetious, but crazy people don't think they're crazy either. Okay?
That's so true. So true.
So, of course,
and there's this thing now where many of the police, especially in small towns, many of the police officers don't live in these towns that they patrol, that they're responsible for. So a lot of this attitude becomes, us versus them,
right?
So to speak. And I don't know, man. It's just unbelievable that it can continue to happen after all the stuff that has gone on. It continues to happen.
That's so true.
Yeah. Barbara, you got anything else for us?
I do. I want to end on a good note, Tom. I want to say congratulations to our Birmingham Stallions. If you all did not watch the game on Sunday night, the Stallions won the USFL championship on Sunday. So we've kind of talked about it all season long. I'll congratulate them on their wins for the season. So I'll congratulate them on their championship.
Great. That's great. I'm glad for Birmingham. When you having grown up in Birmingham, I want to go back to a subject we were talking about before we came on the air. Growing up in Birmingham, went to school there and all that, and was involved in a lot of the community stuff. And I think that we put more pressure on ourselves that should be there. I think, I lived in California for 12 years and nobody talked about Birmingham in a negative sense.
Right.
Most of them didn't talk about Birmingham.
Right.
Now, if I mentioned that I was from Birmingham, then maybe the whole subject of the race issue came up or whatever. I think people who don't live there or who have moved there, yeah, they still have that thing in their head. But I watch a little bit of the news, and they were talking about the World Games, and there was a big ad for the city of Hoover. Frank Mercator, who I went to high school with, who's the mayor there, things have changed in a lot of ways, and and I'm not saying that things don't need to change further, but there are a lot of positives,
Absolutely.
and um, hopefully that will continue. I think the new mayor and the council have done a fantastic job, and I hope that it continues. So.
I agree, Tom. I've been living here since 1979, and I've seen a lot of the transformation of the city, and it really has been a great thing for the state and for this area of the country.
Okay. Anything else from either one of you guys?
No, I'm fine. I'm done.
Okay. Okay.
He's done. Michael's done for the day.
He's done for the day. You know, that deal with the police chief and the images.
Yeah.
That just really ticked me off.
Yeah.
You know.
I actually had a friend of mine I was talking with on yesterday who said she got a lot of text messages from friends saying Happy 4th of July, and she was like, there's nothing happy about it. I know that there's a mother suffering somewhere, a parent suffering because their son was shot over the weekend or last week, shot 60 times. She said there's nothing really to celebrate. So I can agree with that sentiment.
I got stopped. When was I driving home? Maybe it was Friday or from Birmingham, Thursday, and dang policeman pulled me over. And but I was, I always say a little gray hair changes everything. Mm-hmm. But I was ready for him. Mm-hmm. I saw him. He started walking up to the car, and I'd let the window down and put my hands on the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. And so he came around on the passenger side, and I let that window down. And when he stuck his head down, I greeted him with the biggest grin, like,
right.
And, right. Because for me, I had to disarm him.
Yes.
To make sure that we didn't get off on the wrong foot.
Right.
And,
but the fact that you have to think about that and do all those things, Tom, again, it's evident that you expected there could have been some type of issue had you not done those things. And other people don't have to do all that. They just get stopped and they just, it's just a normal procedure for them.
Well, I think particularly young, especially young black men, they don't know. Like right. I said, my whole goal was to disarm him. Mm-hmm. He asked me where I was going. I told him I was going home. I had been in Birmingham all week. I had been working. I was just in a hurry, and I wasn't paying attention. And I had let the speed get up a little bit.
Right.
And he started laughing. I started laughing, and while I'm laughing, I'm thinking, shit, I ain't getting a ticket. Right. But
yes.
You do have to think about those things, right or wrong. And you remember when people were talking earlier about not reforming the police departments, mm-hmm. And some people got upset about that. But yeah, that's a way of life for us.
Yes. Yes.
You have to be able to disarm them and hope that you don't get a bunch of tickets that makes your insurance go up and so on and so forth.
Right. But it's your responsibility as a driver to make them feel comfortable where it should be. They should be held responsible as a public citizen and a civic worker to make you, the driver, feel comfortable. And
Barbara, I'm laughing. I'm laughing at you because, and I shouldn't say laughing at you, but I understand what you're saying. Yes. Mm-hmm. But they also say that you're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Mm-hmm. But if you are an African American, you're guilty until you prove you're innocent.
innocent. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's
And
that's
so
the right way to put it, Michael.
that's just the way it is. You're
Yes.
automatically guilty until you prove you're innocent in the court of law if
Mhm.
you're African American.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing that Thom is saying here. In his mind, when the police came, he knew there was a potential for conflict.
Yes.
And so he went into conflict resolution.
Immediately.
Right.
Yes.
You're right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You know, and it's second nature.
So true.
So when he started up on my driver's side and then decided he would go to the other
That
side,
was the key right there.
I let the other window down,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, and made
Right.
sure he could see my hand. I mean, I didn't expect him to do anything. It was broad daylight, you know, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Had it been night, that may have been a whole different story.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. You just if you're indoctrinated, if the targets if you do a target practice and the targets you're shooting are black,
Mhm.
then that may set you off in the wrong way.
Absolutely.
That's my
So
point. Yeah.
well let's move forward. Let's get with Sean and got a minute, and then we'll get to our G list guest.
Good morning. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Hello to everyone joining in with us this morning. Yesterday was Independence Day. I hope everyone safely enjoyed the holiday. Now let's get into it. It was so hard for me to decide what I wanted to share with you all this morning. I didn't know if I should talk about the first successful animal cloning in 1996 or the bikini being introduced in 1946. Instead, I wanted to shed some light on the Gang of 19. On July 5th, 1978, a bus stops at the intersection of Colfax Avenue and Broadway in Denver, Colorado. As passengers board, a group of people in wheelchairs position themselves in front of the bus, preventing it from leaving the stop. Well, when the second bus arrives behind it, more people in wheelchairs position themselves behind that bus and refuse to leave, trapping the buses between them. For the next 24 hours, 19 disabled activists known as the Gang of 19 keep the buses where they are, making a powerful statement about the accessibility of transportation in the city and all over America. That is pretty cool. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Sean Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
All right. So before we go to the G list, let me just give a shout out to our Heat of the Night group, who apparently went to Covington this past weekend.
Yes.
I understand some of them were looking for Ted Marcus, but he wasn't there. I talked to Ted, and he said he couldn't make it this week, so he'll have to catch you guys later on. But he said that he's glad that you guys went, and thank you for being so supportive. So let's go to the G list, and our G list guest today is Dr. Felicia Bowen, the inaugural Associate Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. She began her nursing career as an Army nurse and served in the First Gulf War, Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, where she earned several awards, including medals for meritorious service, the liberation of Kuwait, and the Southwest Asian Ribbon with 3 oak leaf clusters. Let's bring on Dr. Bowen. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Excited
Well,
to be here with everyone.
Well, we're glad to have you. So I'm just going to throw something out, and then Michael and Barbara come in. But I was fortunate enough to be on the committee, when you came in for your interview at UAB, I don't know how they let somebody like me get on that committee, but I was on it anyway. And what I remember more than anything in the beginning was you speak several different languages. Can you tell us about what languages you speak and how that came about?
Well, German. So I used to be fluent, but when you come back, there's no one to practice with. You kind of lose a little bit of that. I grew up mostly in Germany, so I started preschool there, and my dad did 3 tours of duty there, and ended up graduating high school there, and then went to Tuskegee for college after that. Um, Spanish, a little bit of Spanish. I can order food and I can take care of patients. So, and I didn't take Spanish in school, but I had to come, I needed it where I was practicing. We had a lot of Latino patients. And so the moms would come in with their little ones. And, um, that's part of accessibility, learning to speak some Spanish. So, um, I I did go back for an evening college course, Spanish 101 with my husband. I dragged him along too. So I was more serious than he was though. And so yeah.
So tell us about coming to Birmingham in UAB.
Uh
And
was a
what?
mm,
Go ahead.
well, it was a great opportunity that was offered. Opportunity to do something new. Um, I've been a nurse for quite a while, and I guess with the military background and other leadership positions, I really enjoy academic leadership. And so this was an opportunity for me to grow in that space. And after meeting you and all of the other people on the search committee, it seemed like a good fit. And I don't know if I've said this to you, but um, when I was in my training to become a nurse practitioner uh, in New Jersey, after I became a nurse practitioner, people said, well, what are you going to do? Where do you want to work? And I've always wanted to work with underserved populations. So I called up, um, I guess it was, I don't know what, uh, the U.S. Department of something or other that does all of the placements for federally qualified healthcare centers. And so the woman asked me, where do you want to go? And I said, I want to go to the Appalachians. And she said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, Appalachia. And she said, that's a big old mountain range that crosses all of these different states. So where do you want to go? And, my husband's a Philly boy and he started going back to school. So I never had a chance to move out, but I did work with underserved communities in New Jersey. And so, what does all that have to do with this? It was just so affirming when there were people showing me around Birmingham, and the person said to me, Birmingham is at the foothills of the Appalachians. And that just made me so full. Like, Lord, I'm like in the right place. Don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here, but I do know that I'm in the right place. That's been on my heart for years and years. And so here I am.
Well, good, and you're in a good place. I mean, UAB
Yes.
is when I grew up, United States Steel was the major employer in the city of Birmingham, and I think UAB is now in a very, very positive way. When people say now, because again, when I grew up, downtown was downtown. Downtown was First Avenue North to Eighth Avenue North, and then East West. And so now downtown is UAB and and beyond.
And beyond. Yes.
This lady, I was staying at the UAB hotel over there, and this woman, she said, I said, I'm trying to find something on Eighth Avenue, and she said, well, there is no Eighth Avenue. That's University Boulevard. I said, ma'am, I grew up here. That's 8th Avenue. So anyway, so Barbara, you got
Yes,
questions for Dr. Bowen?
I do. Good morning, Dr. Bowen. How are you today?
I'm well, Barbara. Good morning.
Thank you for being with us. And I just want to talk about all those different letters and alphabets after your name. You got a lot of titles. And I know after you got your bachelor's from Tuskegee and you went into the armed forces and then you went back to school and got a lot of different additional degrees. So tell us about those DNP, PhD, PPCNP, BC, APNP. Tell our viewers what those mean and where you got your degrees.
Sure. So I got my BSN, my baccalaureate in Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama. And that was a really um, that was good for me, you know. Actually, it was like a culture shock for me because that's the first time I'd been around so many Black people in my life, other than
Right.
family reunions, because we always lived in these very integrated communities. So, it was just really cool. And when I listen to students and we talk about, HBCUs and PWIs, or primarily white institutions, I being at the HBCU at Tuskegee, it really leveled the playing field, right? So I didn't have all of those other distracting things to worry about that sometimes students do, students that I work with, you know, um, am I good enough to be here? The microaggressions that sometimes students experience, because everybody was Black and brown. And
Right.
if you didn't get a good grade, it wasn't because, your teacher was prejudiced, because almost everybody was Black and brown. You just didn't study hard
Right.
enough.
Right.
So when I left there, I just had so much confidence in myself as a nurse. You're still growing along the way, but I felt like I could hold my own with any other nurse that was out there. Went
Mhm.
into the military, and when I was in the first Persian Gulf War, um, I met these, all the females were in one tent and men were in another tent. But I met these nurse practitioners and nurse anesthetists, and I didn't know I didn't learn anything about that in school. And so then just having an opportunity to speak with them and learn about the things that they were doing. And I thought, this sounds pretty cool. I want to be a nurse practitioner. I want to be able to provide a higher level of care, and I knew that I wanted to do it with children and families. So after the war, I settled at my next duty station was at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. I was in Massachusetts and then went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And so, Rutgers University is one of the big universities there, and they had um, a nurse practitioner program. And so I applied, I got in, and that is what the APN is, Advanced
Okay.
Practice Nurse. And I am a primary care pediatric nurse practitioner. So that's what the PCPNP and the dash BC after that means that I'm board certified. So I had to take a
Okay.
board, and every 4 years I have to show documentation that I'm still, you know, up in my field, and then I get recertified. So that allows me to continue to practice in various states. So I started practicing, and I started seeing kids with these chronic conditions, mostly asthma, where I was.
Mm.
And, we had evidence-based guidelines. That was right at the beginning when the evidence-based guidelines were coming out. And people didn't want to use them because they felt like, don't tell me how to practice and whatever. But it's all based on evidence. And so, meaning it's research. What works well? What's the best treatment option? Um, but I kept seeing these kids coming back with asthma, and I just couldn't figure it out. Like, why do these Black kids have such bad asthma? Like it's one of the most common chronic diseases in children, but when Black people when their children have asthma, they just seem to fare worse. The
Right.
symptoms seem to be worse. And so I really couldn't answer those questions. And I thought, well, and I also had started doing some adjunct teaching, and I liked it. And I knew that in order to continue to teach in a baccalaureate program, I would need a doctorate. So I started looking for doctoral programs, and there are a lot of really good schools up in the Northeast. So, there's University of Pennsylvania, which is like flagship up there, and NYU, New York University, and then there's Columbia, and even Rutgers had a PhD program. And so I started investigating all of these schools, and there was just something about Columbia that sold me. They talked about um, educating nurses to care for vulnerable populations. And they were located, in Washington Heights, New York. And I mean, I was scared out of my head to start all of this, but I wanted to learn how to become a scientist, because that's what PhDs are. They're nurse scientists, um, with a focus on caring for people who were vulnerable, or for vulnerable communities. And so um, I decided to go to school at Columbia. um, After I graduated from Columbia University, I started working full-time and teaching. um, I transitioned from full-time practice to full-time teaching, and the DNP, the Doctorate of Nursing Practice,
Mhm.
was introduced. And so, you know, uh, physicians have a medical doctorate, an MD, and dentists have you know doctorates in dental whatever.
Right.
And
Right.
dental
And
science, I think
hurting
it's
you. And
DDS.
hurting you.
I think it's DDS, doctorate in dental science or something like that. But um,
Right.
so the same concept was introduced for nurse practitioners, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
going to be practicing at an advanced level, then you should be a DNP. Well, I was already a pediatric nurse practitioner. I was teaching in DNP programs. Um, but I said, you know what? I need to go ahead and get this degree. Um, and just as you guys were talking about, like, traffic stops and the things that we shouldn't have to think about, right? A lot of times people can be overlooked, and it
Mhm.
could just be that one thing. It doesn't matter that you've been a nurse practitioner for how many ever years, but you don't have a DNP. And so I didn't
Right.
want to get caught out in that.
Right.
So I went ahead and I got my DNP. And I did it because I was already a nurse practitioner and teaching nurse practitioner
Right.
students. I didn't need to take that route. So I did it in educational leadership. You can get a doctorate, a DNP in leadership. And so I did mine, but I tailored it so that it was for educational leadership, because I knew and still know in my heart that one day I want to be a leader in,
Right.
maybe a dean one day. I don't know. But to go farther. So that was my focus there. So those are all of the letters. Oh, and then there's also FAAN. So that's
Uh-huh.
fan. That is I'm so proud of that. That is fellow in the American Academy of a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. So this is
Wow.
an international um fellowship, and it's extremely competitive, and it's like the highest honor or award that you
Mhm.
can get in nursing, to be recognized by your peers in the US and abroad for your contribution um, to the science of nursing and nursing care. And so I was inducted into the American Academy of Nursing for the work that I've done around pediatric asthma, health disparities, and equity. So that's pretty cool.
That's impressive.
Let
Thank
me
you.
let me get Michael on here. Michael, what you got?
Well, first of all, Dr. Bowen, thank you for joining us. And let me congratulate you on your many awards and accommodations that you've received. So
Thank you.
they're well deserved. My question is, if you will, take us back to when you went to the Gulf War and served in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. What was your every day like being a nurse in that environment? Were you out in line of fire, or exactly where did you practice and what did you do?
Those are all very good questions. So, we we got to the Gulf. We landed in Saudi Arabia and we stayed at this air base. And so it was like a cement factory, that they had turned into a camp, if you will, for us. So we slept outside, but there was shelter over us. It was hotter than the Dickens out there. I was like, oh my gosh, I've just walked into hell. Like I've never felt heat like that before. It was so hot. And so, you kind of stayed with your unit. And then they they gave us a station, and so um, my unit, which was the 46th Combat Support Hospital, we moved out into the desert. And when I tell you desert, it's like you could see for miles around. And we were basically like sitting ducks out there. So we were supposed to have a security detail with us. We didn't have any of that. It was just our hospital sitting in the middle of this desert. And so a lot of our enlisted folks, they did guard duty around the station. And my everyday job there was, being a staff nurse. And so I had a shift that I worked. We worked 12-hour shifts from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening, or from 7 in the evening until 7 in the morning. And I would go in and, I was assigned a bay of patients to take care of. In the beginning, there was a lot of setting up equipment because we didn't have a lot of patients that were coming in. And we were also learning to use a new hospital. So we were a combat support hospital and we left with something called a MUST system. I don't know what that acronym stands for, but it's basically if you've seen like a bounce house, right? And it kind of, you blow up those things. That's what the hospital was like. And so we had generators around because you had to keep the hospital inflated. And at nighttime, when there was this huge temperature shift, it's just like a balloon that deflates when it gets, it's warm out. And, even our tires sometimes do that, right? So you'd have to get somebody to go out there and start up the generator and blow up the hospital again because the roof is sagging on your head. And then we got a new system called a deployable medical system. And that was like a bunch of little boxes that we had to learn to put together. And so you roll them out in boxes, they set them down, and then you build this thing and connect them. And, that's how you build the hospital. So we did a lot of training on that while we were there as well. And then the casualties started coming. Um, and so those, I would go in and it would be myself. Sometimes I would have another nurse, depending on how many patients there were. And some of the patients were surgical patients. When we were back in Saudi Arabia, a lot of surgical patients. Uh, Anaphylaxis, people getting stung and having really severe allergic reactions to like scorpion stings and these weird spider bites, snake bites. And then after a few months, we moved into Iraq. We moved further north and we staged there. And then we moved into Iraq. We didn't take the entire hospital system with us. We just took the operating room, the lab, and we took a couple of the wards. And so we took that up to the front line. So I wasn't being shot at, I wasn't on the front lines. You know, but we were close enough to hear the tank fights and the mortars. Um, Sometimes, depending on how close they were, we would have to have noise and light silence. So that means no speaking above a whisper, not more than two people in the same room whispering at the same time, and no light whatsoever. Um,
Mm.
so not even the red lens on your flashlight, because people could see us from like miles around. Um, so yeah, and then when I got to into Iraq, the condition of the patients changed. So they were mostly I took care of mostly burn patients
Mm.
and patients who had like traumatic amputations
Mm.
that they cleaned up, if you will. So there was a lot of tank war because the U.S. had air superiority at that time, and the the rounds that pierce through the tanks, the armor rounds, are like plutonium tipped. They get super, super hot to be able to burn through the tanks. And so the people in the tanks would be burned. And they would come to us. And then, we'd have to treat them for their burns, make sure they didn't get infected. They were mostly Iraqi prisoners of war that I took care of in the Persian Gulf War when we were in Iraq. Very few Americans. Um, so yeah, that was basically my job there, and what I did
Mm.
Well, that was interesting because I was going to ask if you had American soldiers, but you were saying you were taking care of Iraqi prisoners of war.
in Iraq. Yeah,
And
most of the patients were EPWs. We did have a couple of Americans that came through, and of course, they were on different wards. We didn't have them in the same wards. But back in Saudi Arabia, when I first landed, they were mostly Americans. And like things still happen. People get appendicitis. It's so they need a surgery, or um, they get sick, or so, we had to take care of folks that way. But or there may have been motor vehicle accidents, and so you're taking care of people. But when I was in Iraq, it was mostly Iraqi enemy prisoners of war that I cared for.
hmm,
Barbara?
Yes, Dr. Bowen, as the inaugural Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion there at UAB, the School of Nursing, tell us about that role and what some of the things you found when you arrived there, and what type of changes have you implemented since you've taken that position?
Well, it's so there wasn't an office before, so we had to create one. That's my job, is to stand up this office, and so that's what I was hired for. Um, I didn't know what to expect really, but what I found is pretty exciting. What I found is that there are faculty and students who want to make a difference, and but sometimes people don't know how to have those conversations because we don't want to offend one another. So we've spent the first year just doing a lot of education. And so we started this series of lunchtime talks and different topics. So it started in January with Community Month. So January, I found out, it's Community Month at UAB, and there's all different types of programming, and we want to bring community members in. And so I curated a series of talks around hair and the meaning of hair and head coverings, because um, there can be a lot of bias or
Yes.
ideas around these things people don't understand. And so it was really, really well received. And then from there was Black History Month, and we had people come on. So over, we've hosted about 16 talks, and
Wow.
we've had over 800 participants in those 16 talks. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, that was pretty
That's
cool.
great.
We've had an
Yes.
open house to let people know where we are. Um, and just getting the word out that this office is here.
Mhm.
I've had an opportunity to work with faculty and students. I guest lecture in the courses, and then also working with like peers across campus. So, from the School of Medicine, health professions. So, just doing a lot of that sort of work, um, reaching out to the community. So, we were invited to co host a health fair with the Birmingham Black Nurses Association. So that went off
Yeah.
in May.
Mhm.
And we were at I'm going to get it wrong. I think it's the George Washington Carver School. I think that was the name of the school.
Okay.
And it was on a Saturday. So it was really cool to have kids out and their parents. And we had students there. Um, so and then supporting faculty, we've formed an internal advisory council, and it is comprised of faculty, staff, and students. And it's so exciting because we have representation from every division, every department, and students from each of our programs are participating, working together with faculty and staff to say, what is it that we want as a School of Nursing? What are some of the priorities that we want to work on? Um, because, diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't belong in just one office. It only works
Right.
if everybody embraces it. So it's so cool to see everybody coming together, wanting to do this work, um, giving us ideas. Um, we have an email and like a little hotline that they can call into. We have a suggestion box. So um, it's just really exciting.
That is exciting. Thank
I
you.
think one of the things you said that diversity doesn't belong in one office. I think it also doesn't belong to one ethnicity or
That's
Right.
right.
one. It is exactly what it says. It's
Mhm.
diverse and
Hmm.
Right.
it belongs to uh,
Everyone.
yeah, all of us more or less.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that's
When
some.
people, I'm sorry,
Go,
Tom.
go ahead, Felicia.
No, I was just going to say that, when people think about diversity, equity, inclusion, they immediately think about black, white, or
Hmm.
race, ethnicity. But there's so
Hmm.
much more to that, right? So
Yes.
it's age, it's gender, it's economics, it's
Mhm.
geography, right? All of these things come into play.
Yes.
And I like to talk about, or I want people to start thinking about intersectionality, right? So that's become such a dirty word. I don't know how, but people get all crazed when you say the word intersectionality, and all it means is where we intersect. What do we have
Right.
together in common? And so people are more than just what you see, right?
Hmm.
Like someone would just see me and say, "Oh, there's a black woman. There's
Right.
a black woman with 2 doctorates who's been in the military, who's a veteran, who's a mom, who's a wife, like all of these different things make up
Yes.
who I am.
Yes.
Um, and people need to understand that white is not white, and black is not black. We all have different
Yes.
experiences. I'm the descendant of a slave, whereas some black people may be from Haiti or from Africa, where they didn't
Mhm.
have some of those same issues and experiences, and generational stories that have been passed down. All of those things come together, they intersect to make us the individual that we are. And we only get to know that. And I always say we have far more in common than we have in differences. But we
Differences. I
don't
agree.
know that until we actually sit down and begin to talk,
Right.
right? There's no way to look at a person and know all of those things. And we don't have a billboard that we wear on us that says, I'm
Uh-uh.
all of these things. It's only through sitting and talking and getting to know people. And that means moving outside of your comfort zone. Like I said, when I got to
Mhm.
Tuskegee, that was the first time I've been around that many black people outside of visiting my family. Um, but it was so cool because some of the folks that I met were, they lived in mansions. They were third and fourth generation college students, they were legacy, their parents were doctors and lawyers. And then there were some people who, people were passing the hat at church to make sure that they had um, their tuition paid. And some people were from rural areas and urban areas. And so, just coming together and even talking with those folks, there was so much to learn about
Yes.
people. So I just think that we get there by talking, and, most people aren't cannibals, right? They're not going to bite you. And so
Right.
just sit down and strike up a conversation. Um, and it can be uncomfortable. I know I'm a huge introvert. So it takes a lot for me to get up and say, I'm going to go sit down next to this person and start a conversation. But I've never been disappointed by doing that.
Right.
Well, let's see. We got one more time for one more question here. Is that Michael? You got another question?
Well, first of all, to be an introvert, you certainly stepped up to the plate in talking to me
Yes.
today. You know,
I never would have guessed she was an introvert.
no, not at all. So I have to commend you on doing that if you are
Right.
an introvert. I wanted to ask you, how did you transition? Because in the military, you were focusing on adult and soldiers. How did you transition from that into pediatric and being a nurse from that standpoint?
Sure. So, yeah, my focus was adults and adult soldiers, um, mostly healthy, right? But where the hospitals that I worked in, we took care of the soldiers, their families, which included children. And I always enjoyed taking care of these kids. And so that's where I made my connection. And in nursing school, I loved the pediatric rotations. I remember I had a job as a tech on on a pediatric unit at a hospital. So I've always known that I've wanted to work with children. And what's so rewarding to me to work with young people is that if we can, people just don't wake up at 18 and 19 years of age and it's like, oh, I'm hypertensive, I have diabetes. Like this stuff has been going on throughout our childhood. And so if we can intervene and teach healthy habits to children when they're young, if we can prevent a lot of, diseases and illnesses through immunization, we can pretty much set them up to have a really happy, healthy life. And so, and helping parents learn to interact with and take care of their children because they don't come with instruction books. I remember calling back to the hospital the night I brought my daughter home, like something's wrong with this kid, and my husband's like, "You're a pediatric nurse practitioner." I'm like, "Yeah, but she won't stop crying." So so, yeah, so I wanted to take her back to the nursery and give her to those nurses. But we made it through. We made it through, and she's all grown up, and I'm so very proud of her now. But you know, working with parents to help them anticipate what normal growth and development is, right? Like, no, your child's not being naughty when they grab your earring or they pull your hair. That's a reflex, and so
Mhm.
that means that they're healthy. They're not. So don't wear big dangly earrings, so they think you're
Right.
Jimboree hoops. So, and just teaching people what to expect from their children can sometimes make a big difference, right? Like, so people aren't disciplining, babies. It's like, this is normal. This is what they're supposed to do. So
Mhm.
I like it because I have a chance to take care of the whole family.
It's great. Well,
That's great.
we're going to have to move on. It's been great. It's been wonderful
Yes.
talking with you. I wish you the very best at UAB, and I know you've done some wonderful things, and we'll continue to do more wonderful things.
Well,
So,
thank you so much. I appreciate everyone. This has been fun.
Thank you so
well,
much.
Thank you
we
for
we,
joining
we look
us.
forward to it. When you earlier when you said you spoke German, you spoke Spanish, and you went to Tuskegee, I was going. Well, did you speak Tuskegee? So. but I think you did.
Ball and parlay. There it is. That's the Tuskegee way.
I spoke Tuskegee as well. Michael may have spoken a little Tuskegee when he
I
was
think we all did a little bit. Being in Auburn, we were too close to Tuskegee not to speak the same language.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did. So anyway, thank you so much, Felicia. It's been great, and I look forward to seeing you.
Same here.
Okay, so it is about quarterback Marlon Briscoe. Who is Marlon Briscoe, you ask? In 1968, Marlon Briscoe, Marlon the Magician, he was called, became the first black starting quarterback in the modern era when he parlayed a fourth quarter relief effort. In other words, he came in the fourth quarter because all the quarterbacks were hurt. They said, well, hey, let's try this guy. He turned that fourth quarter relief effort into a 5-game stint as the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. To close out his rookie season, Briscoe was asked to play quarterback when the other quarterbacks were injured. He ended up playing quarterback for 5 games. In those games, Briscoe set a Denver Broncos National Football League rookie record by throwing for 14 touchdowns, a rookie record that still holds today, 54 years later. Unfortunately, because Briscoe did not fit the cookie-cutter prototype of an NFL quarterback, he was not 6'3", he was not a pocket passer, and he wasn't white, the team held secret meetings planning how to get rid of Briscoe because he had done so well, people expected him to play more, and so the team had to figure out how to get rid of him. After that successful stint at quarterback, where he threw for 14 touchdowns, he never suited up again for the Broncos. He was moved to wide receiver, a position which he had not played before, but where he learned to survive in order to have an NFL career. His 14 passing touchdowns remain a Bronco record. 54 years later, Marlon the Magician still holds the Broncos rookie record for most touchdown passes. Briscoe passed away last week, having seen his style of play now replicated by Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and many, many others. So we want to give thanks to Marlon, the Magician. And that is how I see it on July 5th in the year 2022. That's our show for today. Thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thank Michael and Barbara. Thank our G-List guest, Dr. Felicia Bowen. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thank Emily Hedrick. Thank Sean Joe. We enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.